Hello everyone, welcome. It's the third Friday of the month, which means we are collaborating on our Make It From Your Heart Volume 6 sketchbook. And this is the last sketch. It's pattern 19. We've actually been doing this for 19 months now. That's kind of crazy. So let me hold this up for you. And I like this sketch because it's similar to another design I've used where with the paper strips, but there was some gaps in between as to where these are all kind of layered over each other just a bit. But there's lots of photo spots on this, 10 different photos. So I did print my pictures out to the recommended sizes here. So we've got 3x4s and 3x3s. I'm working on my Alaska album. So we've got pictures from a wild animal reserve. These are all rescue animals, and it was a really cool experience, kind of quirky, a little bit unexpected, but that made it even more memorable. So I'll tell you more about this adventure. And yeah, that's my friend, and we were petting a porcupine, which is kind of crazy to think about. So let me grab my paper packs I'm thinking about using. I am doing a little stash busting. Now this is a great design for scraps because you can see there's just strips, and in some cases it's not even a whole strip if you don't want it to be. You got a little bit poking out the top and then the bottom behind these photos. There's another one there. So these are well-loved paper packs, and some of them it looks like I have a lot of paper in there, but really like that's all cardstock. So I only have a few pieces of pattern paper. But this is called Fresh Air, and this one is Aurora. And I thought this was perfect because there's a moose. We're actually feeding a moose, and then animal tracks. So that kind of inspired me to pull these two paper packs. So let me grab my Versamats. Let me bring in my Versamats here, and then I'm going to start this on White Daisy. But if you look at the sketch, it's actually a frame style layout, which I quite like. I use this often, a little pop of color around the outside, and it looks like they've used the cardstock on the outside is what they use to mat the photos, and I like that. So I think I'm going to use that inspiration and apply that to my design. Now you'll notice they kind of have them flip-flopped. I tend to put my titles and my main focal photos on the left-hand page. It's just my style, but I like that they give you both options. So I'm probably going to go more with this one just because it's more in line with what I like to do. This is Close to My Heart Harbor, which is a gorgeous color, and I thought this would work well because of my shirt here. And it's just a deeper version of this, and there aren't necessarily, harbor featured in these paper packs, but there's like these deep blues and greens, so I think it'll go nicely. So I'm thinking of doing this one for my mat, and then I'll go ahead and gut that out and use the inside to mat all of my photos. I know it's kind of hard to see when you have it dark on the black Versamat, but I'm going to position these two like this. And then we've got a couple of the 3x3s, and then this kind of creates a grid and it flip-flops. So you have the 3x4s over here, and then you do a 3x3 and something kind of like that. So my friend's jacket here is a really bright color, so I think it would be better to separate these, give them a little space in between. I might even put this one kind of over here, just so that color, if this bright color is in one spot, it's going to draw your eye to those two photos before you see anything else. And this way we can kind of use that color to our advantage to help kind of draw you across the layout. Now we get to choose our pattern papers we want to use. So I have some very neutral patterns here. This text paper is probably the busiest one. So since we have so many different patterns going on, I recommend you use kind of more subtle patterns to avoid it from becoming overly busy and overwhelming your photos. So I'm kind of just playing around with this color palette. Let's bring the harbor in that we matted our entire layout in to mat these photos. I'm doing my best to not overthink my paper choices, so I'm going to go ahead and commit to these. I'm not sure if I'm going to use the wood grain or not, So I'll think about that one, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these down according to the sketch design. Each one of these strips is 1.5 inches wide, and they vary in height from 9.5 to 10.5. So they're kind of staggered as they go across. This piece wasn't long enough, so I am strategically putting this one in the middle so I can kind of hide it. Plus, it's the only green. The other colors are repeating. So being the only green, I'm going to put that in the middle. And then I'll accent with green in my embellishment clusters. Let's go ahead and bring the photos in and make sure this looks okay. I like to dry fit everything before committing, but I think this looks pretty good. So I am going to, before I adhere these down, I'm going to take a little espresso ink and ink up the edges here. I'll just do a little bit on camera and I'll get the rest done off camera. These photos were taken in July of 2023 during our trip to Alaska. And as I mentioned, we were at a wildlife refuge. It's actually called the Crochet Wildlife Refuge. And these are, were injured animals or orphaned animals, and they're here for rehabilitation. It was quite the experience, very quirky. We weren't quite sure what we got ourselves into, and Mr. Crochet was definitely part of the experience himself. On both example layouts, the title is under these two 3x4 photos. I found a pocket card in the collection. It says, "Ready for this adventure." I think I like this side better. I'm going to fussy cut this out and just use the words. If I were going to use the entire pocket card, it would hide too much of my pattern paper design there. So I've sped this up quite a bit, and I am kind of rotating the paper here, following the letters, just trying to be mindful of keeping an even border. I'm actually not being that careful. It's surprising how well these turn out when you have wonky letters and you just kind of work your way around them. Let me trim this off and then I will fine tune that and clean up. I want to make sure it looks good, and it does. So now I can kind of get in these spaces here in between and follow it all the way around. I apologize, I'm off camera there a bit. So if we put this underneath, you could go on top too, but let's go as the sketch suggests underneath here. And then I have this moose and then the paw prints from the sticker sheet that I want to incorporate. And then if you look here, they have a cluster here, here, and here, creating that visual triangle. So the moose is kind of big. Maybe up in this spot, we have a lot more real estate. Maybe we can put these here right by the wolf. Now I want some greenery. So I have a bunch of die cut vellum greenery sprigs from the Golden Greenery collection. So maybe the pine trees. And then I also have In the Grove stamp set. I got this out because of the little wolf. But then I also have this oldie but goodie from Close to My Heart with all the critters. So I'm not sure which one. Maybe I'll use this one just because it's been a while. We could kind of highlight this little guy on a circle. I went ahead and die cut a circle with the Spotlight on Nature dies. And then maybe if we just put him right in the center. I'm thinking gray. This is gray granite because my moose is gray. So let's practice a few times. And you know what? It's too brown compared to the color of the moose. So I'm going to switch that out to basic gray. I think that's going to be a better match just so those embellishments look a little bit more cohesive. Let me test this one out. I always recommend testing your stamps before you put them on your layout anyway. That color is perfect. So we'll stamp this wolf right in the middle of the circle here. Very cool. I love it. It looks just like the wolf in the photo there. I want to beef up the embellishments around the title. It feels a little bit lost and lonely over there. So maybe we can kind of layer it over this circle. I'm going to play around with this just a bit, possibly bring in some of these greenery sprigs here. Back to the wildlife refuge. We weren't sure what we signed up for when we got there because it seemed a little bit kind of quirky, a little bit run down. Mr. Crochet ended up being such a hoot, and he has a very interesting story. Apparently, he's done some pretty big documentaries, like nature documentaries and whatnot. But anyway, we kind of thought, well, we're here. Let's just go ahead and enjoy the experience. And of course, he took us around and showed us the animals and shared their story of how he acquired them and what the situation was. And we got to feed the moose and the caribou, pet a porcupine. I was so afraid to run my hand backwards. I grabbed my December daily tray and I pulled out some goodies here. There's this log ground from the textured timber set, and I'm thinking this might look better. The bright white circle with the wolf on it just wasn't feeling right to me. So I'm going to try this and maybe layer some pine cones over the top of it. This layout is a little bit tricky for me to embellish. I'm actually going to cut this wolf out. If I make him smaller, he might be a little bit easier to place. There's not a whole lot of room for embellishments, especially on the right-hand side. So we'll leave him right there for now. And then I've got another log ground. Maybe we can kind of put that underneath here. And then let's add some more greenery sprigs to this area. So it's kind of handy. All these things are already, ready, left over from my Christmas scrapbooking. So it's nice to have those kind of ready just to grab. And I've got a little pine cone here. That is from the Light the Year stamp set. I don't want this layout to get too busy, and I think it very easily could. So I'm just doing some tiny embellishment clusters. And I think I'm going to switch my title around. I'm just not happy with it. So let's flip-flop it, move it up top here. And that's actually going to give me a spot for my journaling underneath. I kind of have a big story to say, so I need more room anyway. And you know what? I feel like that looks better. If we put the moose down here, that kind of creates that visual triangle. And I don't want to not use these, so what if we put them right there? I am pretty excited to be able to try out this new glue gun. This is by My Sweet Petunia, and this was a gift from one of my crafty friends, Josie. She is a team member of mine, and I have been having a lot of trouble with my hands. And I was talking about it in one of our team lives, and she surprised me with this. I was just blown away. I've been wanting one, but they've been really hard to find out of stock, and here it is. So thank you, Josie, for being so thoughtful. I'm very excited to have this. It's just so much easier to squeeze. I've got pretty advanced arthritis in my hands, so this is awesome. And then you don't even have to cap it. You just put it right in and it doesn't clog. I've heard nothing but good things about this. So super thankful for that. I'm only adding a little bit of glue to the end. You don't need to glue down the whole thing. They are vellum, so I don't want that glue to show through. I'm popping up the title on some 3D dimensionals here. It was kind of funny, while I was creating this, my husband came in and looked over my shoulder. And I'm like, oh, what do you think? And he immediately goes, get the pictures, get the pictures. It was so perfect because that's what I think about from this memory. And we actually still say that all the time. We travel with these same friends every year, and it's become a joke. So it's always like, get the pictures. And we say it just like Mr. Kroschel was doing. As scrapbookers, those photos are important. So we really appreciated it when he worked so hard to help us get good photos. On the sketch design, they do have their journaling underneath these two photos along with the title. So now I have a lot more room. I went ahead and printed this out in a Word document and printed it right on cardstock. I do space my lines 1.5, and then I can very easily cut in between them and get these very nice even strips. But I am running out of room. You know what? I don't think I like that. So let me try to scoot them up a little bit, and it's not right. I'm going to go ahead and try vellum. So I printed this out on vellum, and we will tear the bottom here just to give it a little bit of character, a little bit more on this side, and I will slide it up underneath my main two photos there. Let me grab my Cricut spatula here. Oh, actually, that's going under nicely. We've got a little bit of resistance right over here. Maybe a little here. And then you don't need much, just a little bit of glue underneath there. And I do like that a lot better. If you look at the original sketch, I've got my title up top, more journaling down at the bottom, and they had one embellishment here and then two forming that visual triangle. I put two on this side, so I still have that visual triangle, but I just shifted everything over to balance the layout. It does feel really great to use something that's been in your stash for a while. I have been intentionally hoarding this paper, and I thought, why? Let's put it to good use. Isn't that cool? Got to see a lynx. There was a bear, this really cool little fox. Like I said, we fed this baby moose. He was so big, and he had like weasels, all sorts of creatures, things I'd never even heard of. Again, this is a collaboration with several of my crafty friends, so I will have a playlist listed below. You can also find those videos right here on the right. And thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this gave you a little inspiration on ways you can use up some of those paper scraps in your craft room.